Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another show of Indo-American Passage, green cards, visas, and how to get them. I'm your U.S. immigration attorney, Dave Banath Viswanath with the Banath Law Offices. We've got offices both in India and the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, this show is all about U.S. immigration and politics and their intersection. It's on ITV Gold throughout the United States every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and in India on HW News Network, a digital channel out of Mumbai in India at 8:30 p.m. also on Saturdays. So tune into us every Saturday, okay? 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the United States, 8:30 p.m. in India. And you can also watch it on Facebook Live or on their YouTube channel, on ITV Gold's Facebook channel or HW News Network's YouTube channel. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to talk to you all about a very interesting topic, which is what happens when my case is denied at a consulate, okay? What are we talking about really? People have non-immigrant visas, they go to a consulate, they're all excited about coming to the United States to visit, or they're all focused on their business meeting that they have to have, or they're coming as a student, and they file with the consulate, whatever consulate they're at, and they go to their visa interview. And within 30 seconds, they're denied their case. And they're wondering what happened. I thought this was going to be pretty quick, but I thought it was going to be fruitful and approvable. And all of a sudden, they get an officer who doesn't even ask them questions, and then they just deny their case outright, or they ask them a few questions and deny their case. And I'm not suggesting to anyone, either in India, the United States, and the West Indies, anybody from anywhere in the world, that you're going to get denied. Quite the contrary. What I want you to understand is how consulates function and maybe the reasons behind it, okay? Now, for almost every non-immigrant visa, okay, that's temporary visas, like visitor visas, student visas, exchange visitor visas, there is a requirement that the individual who's applying, they have the burden of showing non-immigrant intent, okay? Basically, there's a presumption of immigrant intent on every visa applicant, okay? So on those particular categories, they have the responsibility of showing a consular officer that they do not have immigrant intent. And now this gets into an interesting area, which is, well, if I never spoke to the officer, I never handed any documents to the officer, how do they know whether I have immigrant intent and how do I show them that I don't? So let's just talk about the first step, ladies and gentlemen, and that's the DS-160, okay? That's the form that's submitted with the consulate or to the consulate before your visa interview. And that's a huge thing. I don't think a lot of people realize the importance of how filling out that form can weigh in on your case, okay? If you're talking about a visitor visa and you're talking about going to visit your cousin for his graduation or your sister for her wedding, but then you're asking to stay in the United States for 6 months, consular officers are going to wonder, hey, why are you going to the United States for 6 months or 4 months or 5 months, but you're saying you're going to visit somebody for a particularly special event? It doesn't make sense. And that's why one of the things that we're very, very concerned with, and I'd like to press upon all of you at home, is the issue of making sure that you're detailed, okay? You're detail-oriented from the start. When you apply for your visa, when you're going through the DS forms, that you're very detail-oriented. And there are triggers too, like what your job is, or if you're unemployed, or if you're married, where are your children going to be? Where's your spouse going to be? Are they going to be with you? If they're not going to be with you, why aren't they traveling with you? And definitely, what is the duration of your trip? And how long will you be in the United States? Okay, if you're coming to the United States and your first trip and you're visiting and you want to go touring, do you really need more than 3 weeks or a month? That's a legitimate question from the consulate. And so what consular officers will do is, generally speaking, in that situation, is they'll deny the case under what's called 214B. Basically, that says that you, the applicant, have not shown them or you haven't overcome your burden to show them that you don't have immigrant intent, okay? So very important is right from the outset, the DS-160. Now our offices in India, which is in Bangalore and in Mumbai, can obviously help people, anybody who's traveling to the United States, even if you've already started or you've got an approved petition. We can definitely help people with their consular processing and visa processing, which usually includes all of the form, fill out, preparation for the documents, as well as preparation with an attorney to discuss, the visa interview itself, okay? Now, there's another step there, which is fingerprinting and biometrics. People don't realize that there's a lot of information that's held on individuals by their fingerprints, okay, by their biometrics, by their face. So it might be that you went into the U.S. consulate or the U.S. embassy, wherever in the world, you did your fingerprinting, and all of a sudden something comes up. Maybe it's that you've worked in a country that you never put on your DS form. Maybe it's that you had an arrest that you didn't think was really a criminal issue, so you didn't mention it. But they found out, and now they're thinking, well, if you lied about that, even though you didn't think it was a lie, they see it as, well, it was untruthful. We have some suspicion here. So they'll use this ever-encompassing 214B and say, sorry, case is denied. Sometimes consular officers do give people the benefit of the doubt if everything looks straight, and they want to find out a little bit more about the case, So what consular officers will do is they may fish a little bit, They'll throw their line out and see what kind of answers they get back. So they may ask you, what are you doing? Or I see here that, you were in the United States and you applied for a driver's license. Why was that? So you may need to have proof that your driver's license at the time was specifically annotated, showing that you were a visitor, okay? I mean, it's not illegal to get a driver's license as long as it shows that you're not trying to live in the United States, that it is something that's tied to your visa, okay? And what I'm talking about there is people that have previously had visas and they're applying for a new one. The other thing is, again, knowing what your finances are and being able to explain them. If you're going to the United States, how are you going to afford your trip? If you've got health issues, if you're older, if you've got health issues, those are things that consular officers will be concerned with. They want to make sure you're not a public charge. That means you come over to the United States and immediately need to go to the hospital and you spend, not necessarily by your own fault, but you spend thousands of dollars in free health care. That's a big issue in the United States. In the U.S. today, healthcare is one of the biggest problems that politicians need to tackle, and one of the things that consular officers are seeing, one of the things that immigration officers are seeing, is that there is a fair amount of non-immigrants or foreign nationals that do take advantage of, and I don't mean this in a negative way necessarily, but that do take advantage of the medical system. And it's already sort of overburdened. So one of the concerns when people go in for their interviews is, how are you going to afford this? Okay, and if you do have, if you're elderly or if you do have some medical concern, then they're going to want to know, and they're going to want to know how you're going to take care of yourself. So another thing to think about is travel insurance. Okay, there are plenty of travel insurance companies out there that will provide you with coverage while you're in the United States. Now, again, consulates, and I am also recommending, don't make any firm plans to come to the U.S. Okay. Don't buy your tickets. Don't do any of that. Consulates don't like people to be presumptive, okay? But there are things you can do to get things in order, like preparing for your health insurance, your traveler's insurance, getting your reservations in order that show the dates, creating a chart that shows exactly what you'll be doing during the time that you're in the United States. Those are all very, very helpful things. If you're working, making sure that you've continuously, been employed and you're getting paid by your employer, those are things that show the consular officer that you have an intention to come back. If your family's not coming with you, then information and documentation that show the reason why they're not coming with you. It could be financial, it could be because the kids are in school, it could be because your wife is still working and she can't get off. And if they're all coming with you, explain how you're going to be able to afford yourself. Some people, they're so stuck on the idea that, we need a welcome letter, or we need an invitation letter from the United States. There was a time when that was sort of the status quo, okay? That, you applied for a visa and you needed an invitation letter. And in fact, many countries require it to this day. I have a funny story that I remember about somebody from a very, very large publicly traded company here in the United States. And he was going over to another country. I'm not going to say what country that was, but he had to go to the consulate of that country to get his visa. Now, the best part about this is he also, for that particular visa, needed a invitation letter. And for this country, there are actually agents that will create or find companies to give you invitation letters. even though you'll never interact with them, never do business with them. And those letters don't even come to you. They don't even come to your company. They go directly to the consulate. So you basically pay your fee, submit your form, and then all of a sudden an invitation letter comes from whatever agency, and then the consulate approves the visa. It's a very strange and antiquated way of doing things. And I would say that that's not the way business is done in the United States, definitely not at U.S. posts and embassies. You know, the consular posts are relatively sophisticated, ladies and gentlemen. And so one of the things that they're going to see is if you have an invitation, generally it's for something specific, okay? So if you're coming to the United States for a wedding, and that's the reason why you want to be here, then you're not going to be here for more than a week, 10 days. And if you are, then explain why. Oh, I'm going to this wedding, but I'm also touring for another week, you know? If you're coming to the United States for business, that's a little bit more important to have proof of the business, you know? I mean, you're coming for a meeting. Don't just show me one letter that says, please come. Explain what's going on. How long have we been talking? This is the reason why we got to come. I've got a contract in place. We just need to, you know, hash out these few points, and that's it, done. And if it's to a trade, conference or something like that, have the specifics. Don't just show them, you know, a trade flyer, you know, but make sure you have all the documentation in place to show what you do, how long you've been doing it, and why you're going to the United States. Hopefully, you've also gone to trade fairs in other countries, so you can establish yourself as someone who does this. You can also limit the amount of time that you're in the U.S. for this trade fair. So many people get this wrong. And let me be very frank about these travel agencies that help people with forms. While many of them do a fantastic job, they just don't really understand the sophistication of legal nuances, if you will. And so be very careful about just going through the motions thinking it's just form filling. Oftentimes it's not. And the other issue is being prepared for the interview, which a lot of times people aren't. That's just my experience with it, okay? So now there's another area which is not 214B, okay? Another area for denial that we often see, it's 221G, okay? 221G of the Immigration and Nationality Act, that essentially is related to administrative processing. Again, a fantastic word or phrase or statement, basically saying that your case is pending some review. Immigration, consular posts don't really tell us usually, not always, but most of the time, they don't tell us what this administrative processing is all about. They don't say if it's security checks. They don't say if they have a fraud unit checking your background. They don't say if there was a hit in the security list that shows your name and date of birth to have caused some issue or have entered the United States through some other means. You just don't know. And that black hole of 221G really is something that you all have to think about and be particular about understanding in the sense that it's not very well understood, okay? You just know that there's something that they're doing that they need to clear. The vast majority of cases in most of the posts, I'm not going to say all of them, but most of the posts will be resolved within the first week, when I say vast majority, I would say probably close to 90% of cases that end up with administrative processing are resolved within the first week. There's a smaller group that takes about 2 weeks, an even smaller group, maybe 2%, that take about a month, and maybe a 1% or less than 1% that take longer than a month, okay? But just understand that when you do get put into 221G administrative processing, it doesn't mean your case is necessarily denied. I do recommend follow-ups, whether it's with you or through your attorney or your advocate or representative. I do recommend follow-ups, but be careful about constantly following up. I know a lot of people, all over the world, you wanted your visa today and you're not getting it today. So you feel the need to constantly call the consulate, constantly email the consulate. It won't help you, okay? Again, consulates are relatively sophisticated in what they do. They understand the cases. They have algorithms in computer files that bring up cases on a periodic level. So I would really leave things after your interview for, potentially somewhere around 2 weeks to 4 weeks. And if they give you a letter that says don't contact us for 60 days, then wait at least 45 days before you contact them, okay? It's not going to help you most of the time to contact them the next week. They've already told you that they're going to take 60 days to, to process the case. And the reason why they do that is most of the time, much earlier than 60 days, they'll give you your answer, and a lot of times it'll be approved if there was nothing really that was outstanding. But I'll give you an example. There are a very common name, Suresh Patel or Rahul Shetty, Manmohan Singh, well, not Manmohan Singh, but Lal Singh. Those are names that you may have many people with the same name or similar names or close to that name with the same date of birth. And they may have done something you didn't do at all, but it comes up on a hit. And if it does, you better be sure that that's going to be put into administrative processing. There are people that are also, they say they're not married, but there's something about their case that suggests that they are married. Another area where a consulate may want to send the fraud unit out to go check and see, are you married? Are you working? Are you presenting what they believe to be true? So whatever you've put in your DS forms and whatever you're saying in front of the consular officer, does it fit the profile that they have on you? So we've already gone through 214B. We've gone through 221G. There's another particular clause that we do see a lot when denials come up, and this is a little bit harder, okay? In some ways harder, in some ways not, because at least there's a remedy available most of the time. And that's 212 A6C, okay? That's for fraud or misrepresentation. So if you've ever had an application before, if you've ever misrepresented yourself, or the consulate believed that you misrepresented yourself, you lied, tried to enter the United States through some other means or through somebody else's passport, tried to apply for maybe an H-1B visa or intercompany transfer, which wasn't real. Consulates can sometimes deny cases based on fraud or misrepresentation, okay? If they do, the only way that you'll really know is the line of questioning during the interview, so make sure you're paying attention. And then afterwards, if you see 212A6C on the denial letter, you're going to be able to know that that's the reason. Okay, in most situations, when you have a fraud or misrepresentation finding, there's a waiver available. Okay, the United States government has what's called a non-immigrant waiver. Okay, and you apply with what's called the ARO, the Admissibility Review Office, and that's a subdivision of Customs and Border Patrol. That application is filed with them, and then if it's approved, then it's sent to the consulate, and consulate makes a decision on your case. Okay, now what I have noticed consulates doing, it's very, very dirty in some ways, ladies and gentlemen, is they have reason to believe that you have a 212A6C, some fraud finding, but they have no hard evidence to substantiate that finding. So what they'll do is they'll deny you on two grounds. They'll deny you on 212A6C, which there is a waiver for, and then they'll deny you on 214B, which is because you can't overcome your burden of showing you don't have immigrant intent. And there is no waiver for that. That's completely discretionary. So really the only two ways around that are, one, to apply to the visa office, which sits in Washington, D.C., and ask them for what's called an advisory opinion. And it's just that advisory. Oftentimes, consular posts will listen to the advisory opinion, but again, it's not binding on them. And you have to establish why you believe it was an abuse of discretion or why you believe that they didn't act in accordance with their own policy or law. Or, in theory, you could consider trying to file something like injunctive relief in federal court. Now, I will tell you, many of these cases get denied in federal court because the law is pretty clear about discretion as it pertains to the Department of State. So oftentimes they're immune from cases and there's no real avenue. So it's not it's not an appeal per se, but you're going to bring some sort of injunctive relief based on a cause, and you're going to have to explain what that cause is, okay? So I'm going to say this, I've said this before, I will say it again. U.S. consular posts are extremely powerful. Okay, there's not a lot you can do when they say no, but there are a few things you can do, and a lot of that is the area that I'm talking about. You can be proactive. You can engage somebody who deals with the consulates all the time, and in some situations when things go wrong, you can either have a discussion with the consulate after the interview went wrong or the decision came back, or you can try one of these other avenues like the visa office or federal court in some situations. So those are the three areas that you have to be very, very careful of. And I would say the biggest area, and the area that most people see, is 214B. It's almost the catch-all of ways to consular officers for denial of cases. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about policy decisions from consular posts. We've heard this from various consular posts that they have a goal, which is answering a interview within 90 seconds, okay? And it sounds to you like it's immediate, it's so quick, but really 90 seconds is a long time if you think about it. I mean, if you and I were just sitting here looking at each other and sat there for 90 seconds, you would think, wow, this is taking forever. And that's one of the concerns that comes up, even when you're saying, well, look, how can I explain myself in 3 minutes? Well, consular officers are going to be looking at things like your mannerisms, how you talk, if you're stuttering, are you being clear? Are you being detailed? And do you look like you're confident and comfortable with what you're saying? I understand going to a consular post is not easy. In U.S. consular posts, they're like, almost like prisons, the way they're developed, and all the security around them and all the things you have to go through, and no electronics in many of them. I get it. I get it that you're going to speak to a consular officer that's behind a big screened window, and they're asking you these questions in a sort of a nerve-wracking environment. In fact, I've had conversations with consular officers where I said, for many of these people who do these interviews, they've never had an interview in their life. And now all of a sudden they're in front of the U.S. government trying to get a visa to the United States, and they've heard a ton of stories about people getting denied. So they're going to be nervous and they may fumble. And consular officers have said pretty much the standard answer of, we get it, we understand that people will often be nervous, but the reality of things is they should not be nervous, and we need some bar to set in order to make our decisions. So if we see somebody who's super nervous, we're going to red flag it. We're going to, try to think about why they would be nervous. And sometimes we'll try to get them more comfortable. Sometimes we'll try to, ask them more deep questions to see if it's just nervousness or if their story doesn't make sense. And that's really the position that they take, and that's one of the things that we have to keep in mind when dealing with consular posts, okay? So one of the things, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to take away from this is that if you have any questions as it relates to consular posts, if you've ever had any denials, or if you're going up for your interview and you'd like assistance, by all means, please contact us. I do this all the time. And if you're in India and you're watching, you can contact the Indian offices, either in Bangalore or in Mumbai, and we'll go ahead and set up a Skype consultation where we can discuss the case and discuss whether or not our office can be helpful to you, And just because you've been denied once doesn't mean you'll get denied again. It does mean that if you've been denied, that there's a strike against you. So we got to figure out whether it's worthwhile in filing again. If you've had 3 or 4 denials in a very short period of time, I might say, hey, let's take a break for a second and then apply again. But I've had clients where they've been denied 5, 6 times. And then we stepped in and represented them and provided, them with a proper, packet and presentation, and they were approved for their visas. And we've had other people that they weren't ready. They weren't ready for their interview. And so we do what we can to make them ready. And occasionally we've also put the consulate on notice about certain special issues with a particular case. We had an individual who was a boy with leukemia, and the consulate kept on denying him because they thought he was not going to be able to afford his medical care. But in fact, he was coming to the United States only for his medical care. And his family was very wealthy, and he had a relative here who had put up $120,000 or $130,000 that he was committing to this boy's medical care. And it took almost 4 months of dealing with the consulate before they finally approved the case. We had to send him to Singapore for interim medical care. It happens, sometimes the process isn't quick, but there are things in your favor, or there are options available to take care of these cases, okay? And while we can't ever we can't ever guarantee that we'll be successful, I will say that we have a good track record and there are options available. So definitely, if you have a denial or if you're nervous about an application, make the right decision and contact an expert in the area. Ladies and gentlemen, this is coming to the end of our show. I hope you all found today's show informative. Remember, this show is on Saturdays, 10 a.m. on ITV Gold, 8:30 p.m. India time on HW News Network. That's 8 a.m. on Saturdays Eastern Standard Time. So if you're in California, you're looking at 7 a.m., okay? But if you're in India, it's 10 a.m., okay? And you can watch it on YouTube. You can watch it on Facebook Live. There are a lot of different options. If you have any questions you want to email me, my email is dev@banadlaw.com, dave@banadlaw.com. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Indo-American Passage, visas, green cards, and how to get them. I'm your host, Dave Viswanath, and we'll see you next time. Take care.